The things that didn't bother me in episode 2, 3, or 4 are killing me now. And welcome to the Sundowners Club. I'm your host, Sean. To my right, Sterling. What's up, buddy?
Not much. How are you?
Doing good, doing good. Before we get started today on covering Andor, if you like what you hear and like what you see today, please hit the like buttons, hit the comment buttons, and most importantly, hit subscribe so that we can grow the channel. Okay, we're going to be talking about Andor, Season 1, Episode 11 today, and coming off of Episode 10, which was my favorite episode of the season, we have Daughter of Ferrix. And real quickly, I'll get your feedback, Sterling, but I was really disappointed in this episode. This was, I've kind of been the one that was been a little bit more enthusiastic. I've had my issues with Season 1 so far, but I've been somewhat enthusiastic and looking forward to the payoff. I thought after last week's episode we were going to get it, and I feel like this episode was just it was slow. I mean, it was boring. I found myself just tired of the conversations. I mean, what was your sense of it? What was your
You just need to lower your expectations.
and then enjoy it?
You might enjoy it a little more.
I'm gonna need to put something different in this Holy Grail cup, so that I don't live forever.
I was, it was a chore to watch it. And overall, I think this show's a chore to watch.
I really think before we get into the details and the scene breakdowns of what happened in the episode, I was thinking about this today. Somebody, and they've done it before in some other series, somebody's going to take Season 1 of Andor, take the best scenes, and there are some really good scenes throughout the 11 episodes so far, and I would assume there'll be some good scenes in episode 12. They're going to splice this thing together and edit it like a professional editor should have done, and they're going to turn it into a 2.5 to 3.5 hour
They did that for
small movie.
They did that for Obi-Wan, and it was way better.
Way better.
Yeah.
I guarantee you somebody is going to do that, and it's going to be enjoyable to watch. But watching this week in, week out is just it's frustrating. I'm pulling for them. I want to like this show badly, but and I think opinions vary. I don't want to argue with someone who really likes the show. It is different. It's got great actors in it. I think Stellan Skarsgård, Luthen is amazing. But for me personally, it's unnecessary, all the scenes, and we'll get into it. So, we start out the episode, we're on Narkina 5 and Cassian and Melky have made it through, right? So they're clinging to the side of a cliff as the Imperials are searching for them. And
That's
they look like they're about
amazing,
to fall.
amazing grip strength.
After swimming,
To just be like, he is a superhero.
yeah, they have no shoes on, no gloves, and they've been
Just
swimming
holding
for
on
the
the
ride.
rocks.
Oh man, yeah. So they Cassian tells him they're leaving. We're gonna make it, and they end up finding I guess a native Narkinians. I don't know, we call them Narkinians. I don't know.
We're aliens, right?
They were. We did see aliens,
Yeah.
and they spoke. They had like a little bit of a pirate speech to them. It reminded me a little bit of the character that was on in Force Awakens when Rey was on Jakku, that ran the little stand where she was trying to trade in credits. They had that style of speech, and they looked a little bit like that character. But they were Narkinians, and they initially caught them with webs as they were trying to get to the puddle jumper, but it was strange. They catch them, and then they say we'll get 1,000 credits for the Empire for these two. And then, like 30 seconds later, they say, "You know what? The Empire's not getting you today." And so then they escort them to the Neomos, the space Ibiza, the space South Beach planet that we originally saw Cassian get arrested on. But I don't know, that was a weird scene. It was so quick, and they changed their minds really quickly. It was strange. It was like something maybe was cut there, which I'm not going to complain about them cutting any scenes, but and so from there they obviously, we know Cassian. We mentioned it on a prior episode. Cassian had left a briefcase full of credits and information and blasters, and so we kind of figured that that case would come back into play because of them
Right.
spending time showing him hiding it. But so the first scene with them getting off of Narkina 5, and I mean, anything jump out at you there? Was it just
No.
boring?
it's. I'm not gonna lie. I was watching it and I was nodding.
Well, yeah, because if
It's-
you had swam across the ocean and now you're hanging dangling by a cliff, these guys haven't eaten.
That
There
that made me. I mean, that made me. I was just like, really? They're just hanging on a rock.
were so many places to hide, and they had to put them. It was unnecessary. It was anyway. So, and then we find out we move from Neamos or Neamos to Ferrix. And it's certainly setting up like the final episode is all everybody's headed towards Ferrix, but we'll get to that in a second. But we're on Ferrix, and we are told, or we're not really shown the body, but we're told that Marva, Cassian's adoptive mom, has died, and so they're basically clearing things out of her apartment where she lives, and then we've got the little droid, the B or BT. B2EMO, B droid is upset, doesn't want to be alone. I didn't know droids did that.
He's got feelings.
The droid has feelings.
Droid has
Droids have feelings. And then they bring in, another character that we have no investment in, Brasso, to basically say, "I'll spend the night with you, B. I'll stay here with you." To make them feel
Important
better.
moment,
Yeah, that was that was 5 minutes that I'll never get back in my life. You agree with me, like the first 10, 15 minutes of this episode is just, there's nothing going
Useless.
on.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean that's been kind of the theme for the whole series.
Oh, they also tell
Could
us,
have been
and maybe this is going to pay off in the final episode of the season. I don't know how, but maybe it is. We learned that part of the being a daughter of Ferrix, they talk about a local custom called bricking. And where they take the person's ashes and they mix the ashes with mortar and local stone, and they create a brick. And the brick is then inserted into a wall, letting the remains of the deceased loved one or friend become part of the planet's structure.
I think that's a good idea. I think we should adopt that in real life. I thought it was a good idea.
I don't know. Maybe that something's going to pay off in the final episode where they talk about that. It has some reason for them discussing that. To me, I don't care. I don't care. To me, it's just wasted supposition. It's it's like someone had an idea that had nothing to do with moving the story forward. It didn't make me care about Marva any more than I already did. I like Marva's character, but it didn't do anything. It didn't move the story forward. And I guess it ties into a little bit when they're talking about that. We know that Deidre is aware of the funeral, and she thinks the funeral could be a setup to catch Cassian and maybe even Axis. And so, Deidre initially says that there's restrictions placed on the funerals, but Deidre wants to let the funeral happen because she thinks Cassian may show up. So maybe that's why they concocted this storyline around the funeral, and some of the details around bricking. But so maybe that's the reason for that. But then we're on Coruscant, and again another story that I didn't see where it was going. We have Vale, who goes to the antique or the antique store, to see Luthen, to find Luthen, which we know Luthen's not there. But Vale ends up talking to Clea, and I don't know the point of that. She's defiant. Clea's telling her to know her place, and there's a reason why they have rules. You shouldn't have come here. Vale says, "Who cares? I need Luthen. I think Cassian's going to appear. I think I can find him." The scene was okay. I enjoy whenever they go into the shop and you see some of the relics. I think that's cool. I always find myself not paying attention to what they're saying and looking around the room.
We've seen that shop like 6 times.
10 times, right?
Yes.
Now, this time, I'd have to, for the people that know more about the expanded universe or Legends or something, there was a shot of some medallion on a wall that I did not recognize. I saw Padme's helmet from, I believe, Attack of the Clones. I could be wrong on that. It may have been Revenge of the Sith, but I think it was Attack of the Clones. There were some other things I recognized for sure, but
The armor from the Force Unleashed game, that's probably the most significant.
that's yeah. And then you have Jango Fett, looks like Jango Fett, or some sort of Mandalorian's armor, and then a gun shield. But the medallion on the wall, they zeroed in on that. She was standing right next to it, so I don't know what symbolism that has. Maybe it was just there for the sake of being there, but I'm sure there's a tie-in. But so they talk, and it was confusing because Val is previously she's talked about killing Cassian, and now you get a sense that maybe she's not going to do that. Is a little confusing. And then Vale goes back to see Mon Mothma, and again, it's a conversation where we already know Mon Mothma has money problems.
Yeah.
So now she's just explaining to Vale.
We need a 4th episode of that, of her explaining that.
What we already know. And then you see the daughter, Lita, Mon Mothma's daughter. She's taking part in some ritual around the arranged marriage, the Chandrilian ritual. And
she obviously takes the other guy's deal about marrying his son, right?
Right. So so she leaves the conversation. I don't think she ever told Vale the name of the Dago, about the deal she's going to take that involved the marriage of her daughter. She just cries, so you know that she's thinking about it. But again, another long-winded scene that doesn't make a lot of sense, And so I don't know. I don't know why some of those scenes can't just be cut short, condensed. This is not a long episode, but it felt like, I think this episode was like 39 minutes, and it didn't need to be any longer. I mean, if that's the story they were going to tell for this episode and setting up the finale, I don't think you need it. Usually you want to see more. Like, I've watched Mandalorian, and I want 15, 20 more minutes of an episode. There's very few episodes this season of Andor where I've said, you know what, I wanted 20 more minutes of that. Yeah. It's maybe 2 episodes.
I'm not really excited to see the next episode either.
And it's the finale.
Yeah.
Which is scary. But yeah, so we then move. Actually, before we leave Coruscant, another character that I'm just tired of seeing is Cyril. Cyril. Cyril gets a call from one of his old crew members, Linus Mosk, who is on, what planet was he on? Maldana. But anyway, he tells him that Cassian's mother has died, so he's giving him that information. So we now know Cyril is getting credits from his mother, and he's heading to Ferrix because he thinks Cassian's going to show up as well. So we have several characters starting to make their way towards Ferrix for the funeral. And then we go to Segra Milo, the planet where Saw Gerrera is in hiding, and we see an interaction with him and with Luthen. And Luthen basically says, look, Anton Krieger is walking into a trap, but we have to sacrifice him. Saw Gerrera is upset. He's very paranoid, which is very consistent with this character. But he eventually understands what Luthen's doing, and that this spy that they have within the ISB is more important. And although they don't want to lose Krieger, they have to sacrifice him for the greater cause. So ultimately, Saw comes around to that and says, "You're right. It's necessary. It's war." And so we now get to the scene of the episode that I enjoyed, and it was around 5 minutes long from the time Luthen contacts Clea back at the antique dealership on Coruscant, the antique store, and she basically says, that this is what's going on, and then he has an Imperial destroyer that's trying to board him, and so really cool scene. Again, it's another one of those where I think, and if they don't have something bigger planned for Luthen, then I'm gonna.
It was a waste of time then.
Yeah, because here's a guy who's shown all these signs that he's more than what he's portraying himself to be, and then all of a sudden he takes out 5 or 6 TIE fighters,
right,
like at the drop of a hat.
What was that wood thing he pulled out?
Oh, okay. So when he's on Segra Milo, my take on that is it is a weapon because he told the guy
Yeah.
either give it back to me or put it down, because that means to me that something is going to project. So either a lightsaber or some sort of weapon that would
Right.
fire. I think we're going to find out that I cannot imagine they would have shown that, and it's not going to come out in next week's episode in Ferrex
Well, I mean,
or later.
if they drop the ball on him, though, I mean, to me, he's the highlight of the show. If they don't set it up for him to be something special and have some kind of impact on the greater Star Wars universe, the show will be a complete waste of time.
And I know they've talked about not wanting to have Jedi, the Force, lightsabers, any of the things that, oh, by the way, is the foundation of Star Wars. Star Wars is based on modern mythology, and that's the core to what Star Wars is.
It's
by
like
the
having
way,
Harry Potter without magic. It makes no sense.
right? It doesn't. So it's great that they're telling these stories, and I enjoy them, but it would make sense for Luthen to have some sort of past during the Old Republic where, he ends up having to disappear, when things go bad, or there's something more to Luthen. I'm hoping that's the payoff. He wipes out 4 or 5 or 6 TIE fighters, and the scenes of him. He even took out their tracking, and so he basically wiped them out and did it in a matter of seconds. And then you had he hits the beams where it almost looked like extended
cool.
lightsabers as the ship is spinning and wipes out TIE fighters. So, Luthen has to be more than meets the eye, but we don't know for sure. So we're going to have to wait and see. And then he blasts off into hyperspace. I'm assuming he's headed to Ferrex. So everybody seems to be zeroing in on Ferrex. And then we cut to Cassian, who's made, another great decision. They get off Narkina 5, and where does he go? I know he needs his credits back and he needs his blasters, but he goes to Niamos, and I don't have a problem with him going back to the planet to get his stuff.
Right.
But then he goes to the basically the station where he makes the call, where he got arrested. Could they have done that like in off near a bar somewhere or a cantina? Like he goes right back, and I know they're trying to use the same sets, but they may have filmed that at the same time or within a few but it makes no sense. It's like
they dropped the ball on a lot of the details, but
I mean, that's a little thing to quibble over, but it all adds up. And so
it's Star Wars. It's for children.
Yeah,
That was the excuse you'd always hear in the past.
So he finds out that Marv is dead, and he does the same thing that Andor has done every episode when anything is serious. He just stares. He just got his wide eyes the whole time. The things that didn't bother me in episode 2, 3, or 4 are killing me now.
Right.
You're killing me, Smalls. I mean, it's crazy. But, so he ends up finding out him and Melky split up, which is the first wise decision they've made in a while. And it ends on that note, leading us into the finale. The one thing we didn't talk about was Brix, his girlfriend, his friend on Ferrex. She's been tortured. So I'm sure she'll play a part in the finale. We only saw a few minutes of her. She's obviously in a weakened position. So I know she'll be in the finale. But all these parties that some of whom have not had scenes with each other, some of whom have had separate storylines, they're all converging on Ferrex for the funeral, where they're going to take Marva's ashes and combine it with,
a brick
and mortar and stone, and she will be part of a wall. So we'll see how that adds up. I was disappointed coming off of last week. I thought they were headed in the right direction. I love the scene with Luthen. I love every scene with Luthen. If it was Luthen's show, I'd like it a lot better. But this one was a setback for me. I guess because the expectations got raised a little bit after last week. Final thoughts on episode 11?
I mean, like I said, it was boring. I've said that about most of the episodes. I'm going to go in with low expectations for the final, and I don't think I'll be that disappointed.
Okay.
We'll go in with low expectations.
We'll cover it, and we may have to drink a little bit to watch the finale, especially if they leave so many things just completely, loose ends. I know they have another season to cover it, but I cannot imagine. The announcement that came out that they were going to be putting the show on TV, network TV, ABC, and other channels. That that tells me the ratings are not good. And so I know Tales of the Jedi actually did much higher ratings. That doesn't surprise me because even though it's animated and it's 6 episodes, it captures the lore of what Star Wars is. Shocker.
You
When
got all the Clone Wars fans that will watch that, but this show proves that you can't sell on Star Wars alone. You know, you need more than just the name, and I think they've oversaturated the market right now.
look,
And they've disappointed a lot of people in
the
their past
actors
shows.
are cast well. Other than Cyril, I don't know that I'm not sold on the casting of Cyril as a character yet. Now I may change my mind on that next season, but I think by and large the casting has been very, very good. I like the actors; they've done a good job acting. Aside from, I have a few issues with casting Andor. You know, the facial expressions and just he's the way he's chosen to portray the role for this that maybe I didn't catch in Rogue One, but he wasn't the main character in Rogue One, so that's the difference.
We saw him for 45 minutes in Rogue One.
Yeah, she was the lead in Rogue One and
Yeah.
and carried it. So, but we'll be here to cover it. We'll see how the final episode goes, and we'll be honest and we'll talk about what we liked or what we didn't like, and we'll see how they wrap up the season. So that's going to do it for us today. If you like what you heard and like what you saw, leave a comment, hit the like button, and most importantly, hit subscribe so we can grow the channel and TCB.